If you're tired of getting your butt kicked and coming home with a cool fish story but not the actual fish, this is the video you need to be watching. Hey everybody, welcome back. So I was out fishing earlier today and I had hooked one yesterday that I was thinking about. I took my first trip ever up to Lake Burton, way up in North Georgia, and there's the trout hatchery that they have over there where they release a bunch of fish into the lake, and there were some giant bass that were in there feeding on those trout, and I threw a topwater bait in there and managed to hook one, and I pulled him all the way up to the bank and he was flip-flopping around and he came off right at my feet. Now normally I don't really care if I hook a big fish and lose it. I've caught so many already, it's like whatever. I mean, you can ask folks that I've been on the water with, I'll jump off a 5-6 pounder and be like, huh. But this one was easily a 5 or 6 pound spotted bass, and that one, with it being a spot, my chest still hurt. That one kind of hurt a little bit. But what I was thinking about after that experience was, there's a lot of guys that I've been a personal witness to. I've seen a lot of heartbreak on the water where they hook a giant fish and it's their personal best, whether it be a 2 pounder, 4 pounder, or whatever, or maybe it's a saltwater trip and they've hooked this giant fish and they get broken off, or they don't know what they're supposed to be doing to be putting the odds in their favor, because the fish doesn't like you. He doesn't want to be caught. So he's doing everything he can to get away from you, and I've seen a lot of mistakes get made. And we all lose a big fish, where none of us are immune. Everybody, even the greatest fishermen that have ever lived, have lost sometimes with those battles. So what I thought about doing today is just sharing a couple of tips where we could maybe tip the scales in your favor, where more times than not you'll land the fish instead of having a big fish story and being the coolest fish or the biggest fish that nobody's ever seen. So there's going to be 5 main things that we need to go over, and I don't want you to worry about this because you're in pretty good hands. I've been knocking off bucket list fish for the last several years now, and I've got more than 100, 150, maybe give or take that many different species all over the southeast United States and in a few other countries. I mean, I've got the rooster fish, I've got the snook, I've got the tarpon, I've got giant bass after giant bass after giant bass, I've got giant redfish, I've got all kinds of big fish under my belt. And what I found is there's a lot of things that you can do in the midst of a fight with a really big fish that will, more times than not, get them to the boat or up to the bank. So here we go. We got 5 things coming up for you. Okay, so of these top 5 most important things that you need to do to be able to land a big fish more times than not, number 1 is preparation. You have to have the right gear and the right quality of tackle if you're going to be able to land these fish. It's not like you're gonna just come in with him. He really doesn't want to be caught. He's gonna run, he's gonna jump, he's gonna dive, he's gonna do whatever he can to get away from you. You need to be able to absorb that shock and be able to get that fish in. So do things like make sure that you change your hooks altogether. I normally opt for that option, but if you don't want to change hooks, then at least sharpen them. Get you some good, sharp, strong hooks, because that is a hook failure is the most important link to the fish. If you've got a bad hook, he'll suck up the entire bait and he'll spit it right back out. You'll be like, what happened? I don't know what happened. He just left and spit out the whole thing. So having some good quality hooks is probably the most important thing, because that's the main connection between you and the fish. Also the line, probably second. Good quality fishing line is of paramount importance. It just makes, not only is it important for being able to successfully land a fish, but it just makes your day so much easier. Buying a cheap monofilament line, or if you buy one of those rod and reel combos that come with line spool already on it, that cheap mono is on thick coils on there, and it doesn't cast well, it doesn't fish well, it keeps breaking. Who knows how long it's been on there. It may not have been stored well. It tends to break. That monofilament line breaks down with the UV rays from the sun and all that kind of stuff. Just get you some really good quality line and really good quality hooks. Also get yourself a reel that has a very good drag. You don't want one of those drags that are really sticky. We'll talk about the drag more in a second, but just really good quality gear is by far the most important thing when you're fishing for these larger than average specimens whenever you're catching these bigger fish. I don't even use whatever equipment that these guides have. If I go out of the country or out of the state or whatever, and I have a couple of days to fish and I book a guide trip, I bring my own tackle. I have a big rod tube, and I fly with that on the planes, and I bring my own stuff. Because most of the time when you're fishing with a guide, they're not going to tell you this, but anybody who knows fishing for real is going to know this. Most of the gear that you're going to get on guide trips is mostly their throwaway stuff, because it doesn't really matter if you break it, or if these lures get lost, or if something should happen to that rod and reel combo. It doesn't really matter. That's why they're giving it to you, because they don't know who they're getting. They may ask you some questions in the beginning to kind of gauge where you're at. Most of the times when I go with the guide and I brought all my own stuff and I kind of already know what's going on and stuff like that, they tend to just take me over to where they know where the fish are at, and they just let me go. But they don't know who's coming down there, so that's not a bad thing for all you guides out there. I'm just saying that gear is of the utmost importance. That's the number one thing that you need to be aware of when you're catching a bigger than average fish. Number two is to remain calm. When people get overly excited, it gets really easy to make a mistake. A fish can change directions on you really quickly, or he can jump out of the water all of a sudden, or go the complete opposite and dive right back down to the bottom very quickly. And people that are overly excited and doing too much celebrating and stuff like that in the beginning, it's easy for them to tighten up in the drag too much and back off the drag too little. They'll let a fish jump a few too many times or whatever, and bad things can happen at that point. So remain calm as best as you can. I know this is a really exciting experience and all that kind of stuff, but I tend to do a lot of my celebrating after the fish has already been caught. I've been told that, hey man, you're not happy to catch the fish, or you don't seem very excited about it. I'm focusing right now. I'm paying attention to everything that's going on right now. I've hooked this great big bass, or this great big sea trout, or whatever it is. I've hooked this great big fish. There's a set of boulders or some stumps or a lay down tree or something right there. I'm trying to keep him out of that. I'm trying to pay attention to how my drag is set when the fish is making a run or whatever. I'm paying attention to all these little factors. There's a bunch of things that are going on at the same time that you need to be aware of, and you can't focus and react accordingly if you're freaking out the entire time. So try to maintain some level of calmness. This is going to be harder for you beginners out there if you've never hooked a really big fish before, or if you haven't had very many before, but remaining calm is one of the more important factors here. So that's number two. So number three, the third most important factor is the drag. You have to be sure that your drag is set right. What you want is, in the beginning, for the drag to be tight enough to where you can get a solid hook set on a fish after he's hit the bait. But what you want is it to be loose enough where they can run with the drag if they want to. When I go down to Mexico, for example, and I'm fishing for rooster fish, when you're trolling big live baits out of the back, a lot of these reels, big spinning reels, will have a bait runner feature where you can click it and they can just take line, and then when you get ready to set the hook, you can click it and the drag is tight for you to set the hook and fight the fish on. Maybe in a scenario, if I'm like fishing for bass, like, and when I'm flipping trees, flipping stumps and things like that, my drag will be locked all the way down. If I'm flipping a jig or a peg, Texas rig or something, and I pick it up and I swing on them, I want that hook set to be firm, so I've got the drag locked all the way down. But after I get that fish out over open water, I'm backing off the drag. So being able to make adjustments and quick adjustments on the fly with your drag is going to be a really big factor for landing a bigger fish. Normally their first run is the longest, most powerful run. So when I hit the fish initially, as long as he's not around a bunch of cover and he's around some open water, I'll back off my drag and just let him go. I did that earlier this year while I was fly fishing for bonefish down in a part of Mexico, and also a time when I was doing it for catching bonefish in the Bahamas this one time. I will hook the fish initially, and the drag on that fly reel was fairly loose, because the bonefish will go from 0 to 100 in seconds. They'll be halfway across the flat before you even know it. They take off on you, and if that drag is too tight, they'll break your tippet just like that. So play with your drag. Don't be afraid to touch the drag and make adjustments as the fish is fighting with you. When they make that initial run, I'm backing off of it. When I bring the fish in close to the boat, I back off it again. That's another part of, that's another area where more times than not, a big fish is lost. More big fish get lost at the boat or at the bank than pretty much anywhere else. If you don't lose them in the initial few seconds or the first few minutes, normally it's those last few minutes where last few seconds where you lose them. I back off at the boat because normally, more times than not, a big fish will have one last bolt. You bring him up to the side of the boat, they see the net or they see you reach for him or whatever, he's going to take off one more good time. So I back off the drag when that fish gets in close, and I back off the drag when the fish takes off with the initial run. More times than not, outside of that, I'm fishing a fairly tight drag. It's still loose enough where they can run if they want to, but I've still got pressure on that fish. My fourth tip is to use the rod to your advantage. What I mean by that is that your rod is a shock absorber, and you need to use it like that. That's the main thing. The pressure that you're putting on that fish with the rod is what's wearing him down. You want to wear, there's two schools of thought, really. There's two schools of thought when it comes to fighting a big fish. One is to overpower them completely with a really heavy tackle. You know what I'm saying? More times than not using some heavier tackle, you're just overpowering the fish. You're just winching him in. The other school of thought is to wear the fish out, play the fish out, and bring them in after they've used up all their energy and they've been tired out. Depending on how much cover there is in the water, I'll go one route or the other. If there's a bunch of cover, there's a bunch of trees, a bunch of rocks, a bunch of whatever in the water, more times than not, I want to get them out of there. I've seen guys hook fish and then use the boat to actually drag the fish out of the structure. Normally with reef species and situations where there's a lot of timber and things like that, when they're fishing in rivers and things like that, they'll use the boat and actually drag the fish out of the cover so they got a better chance at landing him out over open water. So you can overpower a fish if you got heavy enough tackle, but if you don't, you need to finesse them. You need to back off of that drag and let them run, wear them down. But using the rod as a shock absorber is the main thing that's going to wear down the fish faster. Which, by the way, the angle that you're holding your rod is going to be a big influence on how quickly you can tire a fish down. If you have the rod tip straight up, straight back over your head, it takes a little bit longer to wear them down. More times than not, if I got a big fish on and he's making a big run, he's got a weird angle on me, I'll put side pressure on him. I'll flip the rod sideways and kind of lean into it, and that'll kind of put the brakes on him a little bit. Also, if you have, we were talking about the drag earlier, if you have to, I'll lay the rod sideways and you can kind of cup the drag with your hand a little bit to add just a little bit of extra pressure, and it'll slow him down a little bit. What you want to do with that scenario is just keep leaning on the fish. Use the rod to your advantage. It's there for a reason. It's a big shock absorber, and that bend in there, if you keep a hard bend in the rod, you're going to be able to wear that fish down a lot faster, especially with that side pressure. That's a cool trick. Whether it be with conventional tackle, fly tackle, or whatever, turning it sideways and letting him go, you can apply more pressure from that angle than you can from straight up. So keep that in mind whenever you're hooking and fighting with a big fish. Now, my last tip is to not let the fish jump. Do not let the fish jump. I know they're really cool. I know that it's one of the most exciting parts of that epic battle with that big fish, but listen to me. Listen to me carefully. The more time he's in the air, the more at risk you are at losing that fish. And I've proven this multiple times across multiple species, fresh and saltwater. If he's in the air, flopping and shaking his head and all kind of stuff, twisting in the air and things like that, it's easier for that fish to get away from you. That's why I don't like, well, one of the main reasons why I don't like having the rod pulled back straight over my head, because you're encouraging the fish to jump. You got your line straight up, pulling his head up towards the surface. And when you're pulling that fish's head up towards the surface, you're encouraging him to breach, come up and jump. You can't keep the same amount of pressure on that fish in the air that you can in the water. And it just makes it a whole lot easier for them to be able to get away from you. So when I see, you can time it right, and you can see when a fish is going to jump. When you've got your rod pulled back and you're looking at the line in the water, a lot of times you'll see the line come away from you and it'll be rising out of the water. At that point, some people will take their rod tip and just jam it straight down into the water and try to turn that fish's head back down, because the line now is at an angle pulling away from him and turning his head down. That's really what you want to do, is do not encourage that fish to jump. More hooks get spit or lines get broken and all kind of stuff. The hooks get straightened out when a fish is either diving really hard or up in the air flopping around. Don't let them jump. Just don't let them jump. If more times than not, if I hook a small fish and I'm just fun fishing, I don't care whether I land him or not. I'll let him jump as much as he wants to because I don't really care. I'm just having fun. If I hook a real big one, you see me. It's game time now. I'm not letting him do any of that stuff. I'm keeping my rod tip low to the water. I'm putting that hard angle on him. If I see him coming up to it, coming up to the surface to make a jump, there are a few things you can do. A, you can point the rod straight out at the fish and wish for the best, or two, you can point the rod tip down and try to turn his head. But if you can prevent that fish from jumping, definitely prevent that fish from jumping. Don't let him do it. Last but not least, I got a bonus tip for you. This is some critical information you should definitely take into consideration, is actually landing the fish. Like I said earlier, more fish get lost at the boat or at the bank than majority of any other place whenever you hook the big fish. And landing a big fish can be a bit of a task, especially with whatever you have going on at the time. A few quick tips for you on actually landing the fish. First of all, if you have a net, you need to have the net already out. Don't be fumbling around, padding around in the boat or on the bank. You got your net way over there, you hooked the fish way over here. You want to have the net within reach when you've hooked a big fish, especially if you're by yourself. I've done this a bunch of times. I've had my net with me, next to me, because I knew that there was a chance that I was going to hook a big one.
Giant bass, giant bass, and that's the biggest one of my new rod, the new Levante rod, Omega bass. And she just ate a Buka shad glide.
Let's get the second one.
That's like the freaking.
Holy cow!
I'm shaking. I'm shaking. I was gliding it back and forth. I felt that tick, and then I just leaned into her, and I felt that weight. Look at this.
Oh,
I got the shakes. I got the shakes. I'm telling you.
dude, that is phenomenal.
Mike Buka don't never stop making baits. Never stop making these baits. Buka is a god. I'm telling you.
Good thing we stopped.
Giant large one.
You want the net to be out somewhere. It's a lot easier to just scoop them up than it is to be trying to grab them with your hands and stuff like that. Leaning over the side of the boat or over the side of the bank trying to reach for them and losing them that way. So you want to have your net somewhere nearby. If you're saltwater fishing, you want to and you're gaffing a fish, you want to have the gaff someplace easily accessible. You don't want to have it put away somewhere where you have to have somebody dig around and look for it, and all kind of stuff like that. You want to have whatever fish landing device that you need easily accessible. Another thing, when you're netting a fish, do not chase the fish with the net. I've seen this happen too many times where somebody will pull a fish up next to the boat and their net man is trying to get the fish tail first. You never go for a fish with the net by the tail. You get them head first. What the guy with the rod should be doing is holding the fish up and having control over that fish's head. 99% of fish can't swim backwards. So he can only go one way. That's whatever direction that the head is pointing. So the guy with the rod needs to be putting pressure on the fish and dragging him, keeping his head up out of the water if you can, and dragging him up and over into the net. If the guy with the net is chasing him around by the tail, there's room for error right there. And more times than not, you won't get him in like that. All you're going to do is encourage that fish to bolt, and you don't want those problems. Just, make sure that the fish has been worn down enough. Drag his head up and over and into the net. If you're a saltwater guy and you've got a gaff, and you're going to gaff the fish, hit him someplace on the front side of the body. You never want to go for the tail end of the fish because his head is just swinging around and stuff like that. Now, not only is that a safety problem because you can get people in the boat hurt, but it's also a risk for you still losing the fish. You want to hit that fish someplace around the front end of the body. You want to get him in the shoulder or just behind the gill plate or through the bottom lip or something. Somewhere in the head or just behind the head is really the better area if you're going to be gaffing a fish at. That's really what you want to do, is aim for those areas. If you can, and it's a big enough fish, you might want to get 2 gaffs, where you have a second gaff. You get one in the front end of the body, and you might have another guy get them in the back end somewhere, and you pull them up into the boat together. Some guys will do that, and they don't even fool with the fish flopping around in the boat anymore because it's a safety problem. They'll put 2 gaffs in the fish, pick him up, and then literally just lay him in the ice chest and slam it shut. That's one of the main ways that you can do it safely and efficiently without having to worry about losing the fish or getting anybody hurt in the boat. All right, so that's all I got for you right now. Hopefully these tips help you the next time you hook a big fish. Remember, remain calm, don't freak out, have some good equipment when you go into it. Make sure that you have your net or whatever landing device you have easily accessible. And don't chase the fish with the net. For the love of God, don't do that. All right, so that's all I got for you right now. I'll be back to you guys with another video later on. Hopefully this helps you. By the way, find me on Instagram and on Facebook. You can send me your pictures of your bigger fish, and I'll post them up at the end of these videos. I kind of want to show the support that I've been getting. There's been a lot of guys showing me a lot of big fish, like, hey man, you told me this or you taught me that or whatever, and I went out and I caught, look at what I did with it, and those posts really do make my day. So I would like to start sharing those with my audience at the end of these videos. So go ahead and send those to me, and I'll get them right up. Thanks, guys.